This story begins on a remote small island off the coast of New South Wales in June 2019. Port of call is the beautiful local museum.
Well, I'm Chris Murray. I'm a member of the Lord Howe Island Museum Committee, the honorary committee that manages the museum. I've started some really big productions in the past. For example, when a feature film was made here in about 1982, based on one of Colleen McCulloch's books, was set in a hospital up in New Guinea after World War II, but it was filmed here on Lord Howe Island. And in the opening scene, I have the starring role of a corpse being carried across in front of the camera. I'm still waiting for my
credits.
My credit or my letter from Warner Brothers or Paramount. It hasn't turned up yet, but you never know your luck. Anyway, why I'm particularly interested, why you couldn't have come here at a better time. When Brett Hilder had a friendship with our first museum curator, Jim Dorman, who's passed on, and the Hilder family did. When Brett died, our museum curator went up to Coolangatta or somewhere up there in southern Queensland, I think, and saw the family, and they donated quite a bit of memorabilia that related to Brett Hilder to the museum here, which we hold. Now, our curator was also able to get from the family some boxes of a book that Brett wrote, Navigator in the South Seas, and it sold very successfully here. Now, we sold out some time ago anyway. Just recently we were trying to think of some projects we'd like to support, and we would really love to get permission to reprint the book and put in a lot of the extra memorabilia and material, which would make it so much bigger and better than it was originally. We have not been able to find out who's got the copyright on the book. Now, the last publisher was Rigby, and they were bought out by another company who've lost all the records. So they themselves don't know where the copyright lies. And we do know that Brett had 2 marriages, so I mean, all that stuff might be a little bit complicated, we don't know. And we're actually to the point where we were thinking of going to the Supreme Court to see if we could find out from his will where he might have, because the Supreme Court keeps all the probate stuff, and that's all open to the public record as long as you have a legitimate interest.
Yeah.
And we don't want to republish the book and offend anybody.
No, understood.
But we've got all this wonderful material. We think it'd be an amazing book to have back in print. And we just really need permission to republish it. I mean, we could probably even manage some small royalty or something to go on.
That'd be wonderful, because I know her proper name's Beatrice.
Right, yes.
But she's now Beatrice Yell, Y-E-L-L.
I've seen her name in some of this information.
Brett was married twice.
Yes, yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
So this is also sort of
news to you,
new information.
Yeah.
But we grew up together in Castle Crag, which is of course the Griffin subdivision.
Wow, okay.
And this is where Griffin comes into it. Because my father worked for Griffin in Melbourne.
Right.
And he was 19 when he started work there. And then after the debacle of the way they treated Griffin in Canberra, he left Canberra and he formed a company called the Greater Sydney Development Association. And this company they put in a bid to buy what they thought one of the promontories in Middle Harbour in Sydney, and they got, for the amount of money, I can't tell you that off the top of my head, but they got 3 promontories. They got Castle Crag, Middle Cove and Castle Cove. And so in Castle Crag it was a very unusual subdivision because Griffin had a natural affinity with nature and the earth forms and plants. He really wanted to be a landscape architect, but there was no such course. He got his degree in Chicago, and Marion, she was the second registered architect in America, and she did these brilliant, beautiful illustrations. As I said, my father then came to Castle Crag about in the 1930s, and prior to that he'd been very involved in the Wesleyan Church in Kew. He was the young man's Bible study group leader. They had about 50 to 60 young men, and he was the church secretary from the age of 16. And his mother wanted him to be a minister. His father was a lay preacher, and then he did his first building there in that little church. And the Griffins also came from strong church background, but after they all moved, and somewhere in this period, and I'm not sure when, I don't think up to date, no one is quite sure where Marion or when Marion started reading anthroposophy, but she became very involved, and after my parents left Melbourne, they became anthroposophists in Sydney. So this was the beginning, through the Griffins, of their connection to anthroposophy.
Well, you have to give me a little bit of an outline of anthroposophy. I've certainly heard the term, but I don't know anything at all about it.
Well, it was a philosophy founded by Rudolf Steiner. So then my parents, anthroposophy you were asking, Rudolf Steiner was originally a theosophist, and he left that because he found that it was an Eastern form of philosophy, and he formulated a Western form of philosophy based on Christianity, and he could see the spiritual reality basically.
As soon as you mentioned Steiner, I've got a bit better idea, because I know a little bit about Steiner, and remarkably original thinker, and I mean there are still a lot of Steiner schools around now.
Well, I would say my father then, and in the early days in Castle Crag, an anthroposophy means man, wisdom, wisdom of man. So that's the basis. But people cannot say it easily, they seem to stumble. Anthroposophy, anthropology is easy, it's well used and known, but anthroposophy becomes quite difficult.
It's got an S and a PH. I think there's, I can understand. I could get a bit.
And so Beatrice and I had a little, we played together, but I think probably too there was a certain division because they were a good Catholic family.
Oh, I see. Yeah, this would have seemed a bit.
She went to a Catholic school. I went up to Roseville Public School. So, and I'm still meeting my friends. 10 of them from Roseville Public School.
That's amazing after all those years.
And I still meet up with Beatrice.
Well, I would love you. How much longer are you here?
We're leaving today, 1:30. The bus
well, then I'll have to nip up home, and I'll just do a little letter or something. If I could give that to you to take to her.
I'll be very happy to do anything to help.
Yeah, I know we've got Brett's passport here. We've got a lovely colour painting of him in the museum.
Because his father, was J.J. Hilder. All his artworks from the National
Yes, that's
State
right.
Art.
I wasn't aware that his father had been. Brett, of course, was an artist too, but probably not quite as well known as his father.
No, correct.
So we've got a lovely lot of stuff that we could put into that book, but our problem really is
getting the official.
Well, the official came not
B, even if she's she's not the person, she'll know her kids.
She'll know where
I know
to go.
she's got a cousin,
Yeah.
she's got a sister,
Yeah.
her brother's died, I know that.
Yeah.
And I don't know about her first, but Brett, did he have children from the first wife?
I think, I'm pretty sure there are two families. See, that's where it might get a bit complicated. But anyway, let's try it. See,
I'm
you
sure
talk
she'd
to
know.
Beatrice, you know, and the family might just be glad to have it back in print. And we just...
I'm sure she would.
Yeah, you know, in the book it mentions Lord Howe in a number of instances, including about 1948, he was very close to Lord Howe in a very small Burnsville trading vessel, and he ran into this horrendous cyclone, and there's about a 3-page description in the book of what it was like in the cyclone. You know, it was just absolutely terrifying. All the lifeboats were ripped off, you know, ripped out of the davits, you know, off the boat. You know, all sorts of things happen. And interestingly, in the museum collection here, we've got the old-fashioned, or the first wind recording device that the Bureau of Meteorology had here, which is called the Dines anemograph. And as the wind blows, it charts a line up and down. The more strongly the wind blows, the wider the inscription on the graph. Anyway, when Brett was in that cyclone off Lord Howe, the Dines went off the chart, And they actually had a yacht race going on at the time from New Zealand to Australia, and the yachts were just absolutely polarised, you know. But anyway, there's an amazing little description in the book about that. But he was also, all the Burnsville captains, you know, were highly regarded on the island. And Brett, no more so than Brett, you know, who became ashore and made many friends and did little illustrations and paintings and things here. So, yeah. So,
now, all I'll ask is,
yeah.
for this help, if you give me a couple of the books when they're in print.
Oh, no worries at all. We'd be delighted to.
That's what I thought.
And I mean, for the family too,
yes,
you know,
yes.
like we'd love to get it back in print. I mean, you know, wherever the family are, I'm sure, I mean, probably even have a little book relaunching or something. You know.
That'd be wonderful. We can all fly here again.
Yes. Anyway, so we should really wrap this up because I'll nip home. I'll show you a copy of the book that I've got, you know, which is one of the ones that came from the estate.
Originals.
But also, the one I've got is a little paperback, but they were published. I've seen a hardcover edition of it as well. And antiquarian book dealers still have them, you know, you can get the odd copy around the place.
What's it called again?
It's Navigator in the South Seas. Navigator in the South Seas.
How do you get that sorted?
I'll nip home, I'll do that. I did a letter for our publisher, who does all the publishing for the museum. He was going to try to track down the copyright, and you know, it just became immensely complicated. You know, went to all the people who should have known, and everyone has lost the records, whatever. So we've sort of almost come to a dead end. And our final thing was, we thought, well, we did pursue the issue of probate, and probate records are all available through the Supreme Court, and they are on the public record. As long as you've got some legitimate reason why you need to know. In our case, we thought, well, in his will or his wife's will, there might be some.
This will save you a lot of money and time.
Fantastic.